The last race I did was round 4. No, the last race I did was ruts, and I was a little cocky coming off of the USDR race going into ruts, and ruts was pretty tough, and I didn't do that well, so it was more of a wake-up call that I needed to get serious. 2 weekends ago I helped out at the Lost Coyotes race, and I did a checkpoint, and actually I enjoyed it immensely. It was a really fun weekend. It was a long 4-day weekend out in the desert doing checkpoint, and a lot of noise, a lot of dust, but it gave me a much greater appreciation for the sport and the amount of work and time and effort that everybody puts into it. Since then, my wife and I, we went on a trip. We took 3 weeks, and we got on the GS, and we rode around the Southwest and the West. Did 8 states in 3 weeks. It was amazing. It was one of those kinds of trips that you always kind of think about in the back of your mind. It's the kind of trip that, as a motorcyclist, you should get out and do. And we saw some amazing stuff. And we capped it off by spending a weekend at Laguna Seca for the historic car races, which is brilliant and fun. And if you've never done it, I highly recommend it. So last week, this week before the race, I got really sick, and I was up all night getting sick every hour on the hour, and the day after and the day after that, all of my organs were sore. My stomach was sore, my lungs were sore, it hurt to breathe, but I really, really, really wanted to come out and do this USDR race. The weeks preceding that, I had been running a fair amount, and I even started getting up to 5 miles, so I really thought that I had started getting my fitness back up to where it should be. Unfortunately, it kind of was dashed by the sickness. So on Thursday, I was starting to feel a little bit better. So I took my SD1000 and I went out to Harbor Freight because I didn't have a safety wiring tool, and I figured that's something I really needed in my toolbox. So I went out to Harbor Freight, and I was just walking along in the store. I saw zip ties. So I just grabbed some zip ties. I was like, maybe I'll need some this weekend. I'll put some in the bike, just because. So in prep for this race, I needed new tires, and one of the guys that I worked with on the Lost Coyotes race recommended this guy JD in Santa Clarita. He's a really cool guy. Go check out his shop. He does Maxxis Desert IT tires for some ridiculous price, like $110 or $120 mounted. So call him. He's a good guy. But he was out of the Maxxis tires, and he recommended his secret formula, which is a Dunlop in the back and a Pirelli in the front. And he said he really liked how the Pirelli hooked up. I gave it a try for this race. I hadn't had fresh knobbies on the XR in a while, and it was funny because I took it to go to the grocery store, and it was like riding an ice skate. Like, you give it gas and it would just spin the rear tire. So, but they ended up being great. I probably will go with another set of them in the future. I submitted an application for the Catalina Grand Prix, and for those of you who don't know what the Catalina Grand Prix is, it's a off-road motorcycle race on Catalina Island that ended in 1959, I think, and that was the last race they had. So for whatever reason, they've decided to start having the race again, and this may or may not be the only time they have it ever again. So it would be really cool to be able to race in the Catalina GP. I don't think I'm getting accepted, but there's always a very slim possibility. Okay, so USDR Round 5. The weather was hot. It was over 100. I got my wife sick, so we didn't go out on Friday in camp. Actually, she went home from work sick, thanks to me. I woke up at, went to bed at midnight on Friday and woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. And my wife and I went out to Charlie's place. I think this is one of the first times I actually went down early and I looked at the start and I left my bike on the start and had like a good spot. I always have a crappy spot on the end. And since they put a bigger rear sprocket on, I was going to try to do a start in second gear. I hadn't done that yet. So I practiced it a couple times and it was completely calm. Like the guys in front of you would go and the dust would just kind of linger and hang around, and it was really frustrating because it was really dusty. I mean, a little bit of a breeze one way or the other would have been great, but it was really, really calm. So the guys would take off and we'd have to wait 4 or 5 minutes before the dust would actually clear and not blow away. So I knew if I didn't get a great start, I would be way back in the dust and hopelessly in the very back of the pack. So the guy starts us, and I start out in second gear, and the only guy that got by me was a guy on my left, and he didn't get by me by much. I don't want to say I let him by, but it was just him and me. And I looked back at one point, and it just looked like a bomb had gone off. You couldn't see anything. So he and I just took off up the hill, and right away in the first half mile, he blew a corner, and I took off, and I led the race for 5 or 6 miles. And of course, right on the corner is this long fire road, and I, do what I always do in the 650. I take it up to 80, 85, whatever, and I look behind me, and just a massive cloud. So I knew I actually had a fair chance to stay in the lead for a little while. It was a really neat feeling. I've never led a race before. It was really scary because I actually have to look for ribbon and look for turns and stuff. And so I got out around the guy and I took off down the fire road, and it was pretty fast for a while. So I was really hammering the gas. But after about 3 or 4 miles, I started to get really tired. All my guts inside from being sick that week still were sore from getting sick so many times. So, and I was going through the whoops. I was riding way over my head. I was probably averaging between 40 and 60. Maybe not quite that fast, but I was averaging a very high rate of speed for me. I went through a couple bushes, like the big, I don't know what the bushes are called out there, but they'd be this big, and I'd go right through the middle of them, and I was almost like on a rampage. I was like, F you, bush, and then just go right through the middle of it. And I was swapping out, like the back of the bike was flapping back and forth. And actually, I even think that new front tire saved my bacon, because there was once or twice that I was in the air coming down, and the back of the bike was almost perpendicular to the front of the bike, and the front tire would grab and it would kind of just straighten me out. I finally realized, okay, it was a really cool feeling to lead the race, but I needed to slow down. I was going to get hurt. I was going to crash. I was going to jack up the bike. I was going to do a whole bunch of stuff that I don't want to do, because I knew I wasn't going to win the race. I mean, it was really cool to lead, and that's another step in the right direction. But I could hear guys coming behind me, and that's the thing that I never realized before when you're in the front, is there's 50 guys behind you that are pissed, and they don't want to be in the dust, and they want to be in front of you, and they're pissed at you for making the dust. So that pressure and knowing if you slow down just a little bit, you're going to get run down by a bunch of guys, and then you're going to be in the dust. So new emotions for the racing beginner. It was a really neat feeling. It was my Johnny Campbell moment. I was all by myself, and there was no dust, and I was going fast, and I was in first place. So that was a really neat feeling, and I don't know when I'm going to have it again, but it makes the race that's what makes the racing worth it, is having feelings like that. While I was racing along, my organs were actually angry with me. Like, what are you doing? You should not be flying through the desert, through bushes, you bush, and over dirt and stuff at very high speeds when all of this still hurts. The leaders were supposed to do 4 laps. It's a 20-mile course, so I was hoping to do 4, and I was very big-headed about that idea. About 15 miles of the course was whoops, and some of them were 3 or 4 feet deep. They were huge, and at one point in the course you can kind of look off in the distance and it's like a sea of whoops everywhere. And in fact, there's a couple canyons where the entire canyon was just whoops. There was no way getting around it. So it's either 65 miles an hour or blah blah. And of course, after just a few minutes, I'm just down into first gear, just kind of going through them. And I figured out what the feeling is like. It's like if you're jumping on a trampoline and then you try to stop yourself. it's like doing that every 5 seconds. I really did not enjoy the course. It was not fun. I mean, there was a couple parts that were fun. The start was fun. I liked the fire road, of course, and the sand washes. And I actually really liked that there was a couple technical climbs and super technical descents that I really liked. But other than that, it was just whoops for the entire loop. And it just got really boring. I mean, besides the fact I was frustrated because I wasn't doing very well, but it just was kind of unoriginal, I guess. Can I do better? Who knows? But I definitely have to say I didn't enjoy the course that much. So I finished my first lap. It was hard, and I went out for my second lap. I passed a slower guy through the fire road, and my whole headlight number assembly thing, the whole front of the bike came off. There's these, you know, little clips that hold it on. They came off. So just luckily, I'd gone to Harbor Freight 2 days before that and bought zip ties, and I thought to myself, maybe I should take some zip ties and put them in my little tool bag on the bike. How unbelievably lucky is that? So I had to pull off, and I was probably there for 15 minutes. I must have lost 50 spots or more, just kind of zip tying the thing back together, and then I got going, and I was already pretty tired. At the end of the second loop, I was exhausted. I was really hot. I was sweating like crazy. I was getting so much sweat in my eyes. It was actually painful. It was stinging a lot, and my goggles were dirty. And as I was finishing the second loop, my number plate headlight assembly thing fell off again. So I actually pulled into the pits, and I got off the bike, and I was standing there kind of in a daze. And I guess from what my wife says, as soon as I stepped off the bike, they waved the checkered flag. So if I wouldn't have pitted, or if that thing wouldn't have come off again, I would have actually gone out for a third lap. And I have to say that I'm glad that I didn't, because the 2 laps absolutely kicked my ass. I'm just not in as good a shape to be a consistent competitive desert racer as I need to be. I'd have to be riding 2 or 3 days a week, I think, to actually be competitive. I mean, I don't have time for that. It would be expensive because the extra bike maintenance, tires, and I don't know if I would want to make it my life like that much. Like the guy, I think his name is Neil, Blue Bull, he just did that rally, and it was, 12 days long or something like that. And he spent a lot of money and a lot of time. And I mean, I love riding motorcycles, but I don't think I could do it that often. I think I would almost burn out, to be totally honest. And that's brutal. And I have such huge respect for those guys. The guys that do Dakar or Erzberg, that stuff to me is, I mean, the people that even complete, that's whenever I ask somebody, oh, I know somebody that did Paris Dakar, I don't ever ask how they placed. I ask if they finished. Because if they finished, that's, in my opinion, that's legendary. So, because I don't imagine that if given that challenge, I would finish. I would like to think I would, but I need my sleep more than that. The next race, I don't know when the next race is going to be. I'm going to need about a week to recover from this one, because I'm still, the inside of my body still hurts. But I didn't crash. I finished. I don't know how I finished, because I got passed by a lot of guys. I mean, it doesn't really matter, I suppose. The feeling of leading was unbelievable, and that, for me, that made my weekend. So, yeah. So, see you on the next race.